Hello, my name's Anna Amelia and I'm from Northeast Animal Rights, and welcome to another one of our talks on all things vegan. So today I'm talking about zoos, mobile zoos, captive animals, and just generally, okay? Why don't vegans support zoos? We don't support them because veganism is about the wider exploitation of animals. It isn't just about the food part of it. So we boycott zoos, we don't go to circuses, we obviously don't approve of mobile zoos. So this is what I'm going to be talking about today. There is no need to see animals which should be in the wild. We don't need to see them close up. We don't have an automatic right to see them. There's a very good reason why we should not be close up to elephants or giraffes or kangaroos, for example. They simply don't belong in this country, and they certainly don't belong behind bars in an animal prison. The definition of a zoo is an establishment which maintains a collection of wild animals, typically in a park or gardens, for study, conservation, or display to the public. Why should we have the right to display animals to the public, take animals from the wild or breed them in captivity for display to the public? How wrong is that? Now let's talk about the conservation con. Most of us will have been to the zoo as a child. I did. I went to Edinburgh Zoo, I remember that quite well, and also Jersey Zoo as an adult when I was a vegetarian at the time. As an adult, I went along because I believed the conservation con, which in reality is another money-making guise and an animal breeding experiment. Animals bred in zoos under the guise of conservation are rarely released into the wild, so there's no benefit to their species and there's no benefit to their environment or the natural habitat. If there was a real effort to support conservation, they would support conservation charities actually in the countries. For example, they would push for a ban on trophy hunting. They would work with anti-poaching organisations rather than working with animals in a country which is alien to them and which they have no chance of releasing to the wild. It's yet another example of humans messing with nature for human gain. 95% of animals in UK zoos are not endangered, and 25% of zoos don't even have threatened species. So again, it's pure exploitation. Zoos can cull, also known as kill. That the cull word, which is kind of like an almost sanitized word used instead of kill. They can kill animals for whatever reason they want, including too many of them being born, too many of one species being born. So they're actually encouraging an animal to get pregnant, and then if that animal has too many babies, they will end up culling them. You may remember an outcry a few years ago over Marius, who was a perfectly healthy young giraffe, killed by a bolt gun to the head, then dismembered in front of an audience of zoo visitors at Copenhagen Zoo. His crime? There was just too many of them. That's all it was. There was nothing wrong with him. He was perfectly healthy and he would have survived. But they decided that they had too many giraffes at that particular time, so they killed him. And then they had the audacity to actually cut up his body in front of people going in. You may have heard of the Cumbrian Zoo as well a few years ago, where 500 animals died in 4 years, and a keeper was also killed by a tiger. So again, it's evidence of animals, animals are not thriving in these zoos, they're not being looked after properly, they're not thriving, and they shouldn't be there. And also the human interaction, the fact that somebody's called a zookeeper, a keeper of animals, should any animals be really kept? And I've also I've had the misfortune of seeing social media videos of absolute idiots just taunting animals in zoos behind glass screens and filming their reaction. I mean, again, it's proof of the fact that it's exploitation. There's no benefit to the animals. So why are we allowing this to happen? And we also know, we know what happens when animals are caught up in a war zone. The animals in zoos are always the last to be thought of and the last to be rescued. And we know that's very true because we know, you can see in the news it's happening at the moment with Ukraine. This time, for some reason, the animals are a big focus. People are trying to actively get the animals out. People like Pen Farthing from NowZad and other organisations like Viva are working really, really hard to get animals out. But there's animals stuck in zoos, and animals in zoos have a really, really hard time. There are a lot of behavioural issues in zoos. Lions spend 48% of their time pacing. Now, a lot of these figures I'm giving you are from Freedom for Animals, so you can check, because obviously they have sources which they take these facts from. So they spend 48% of their time pacing backwards and forwards. They would not do this in the wild. The hunting, the sleeping, the mating, they're doing all the natural things that they should be doing. So if you add to that the sleeping time, they really don't have any quality of life. They have 18,000 times less space than they do in the wild. So even though you go to a zoo and the zoo will say, look at how many acres these animals have, it's nowhere near the space that that an animal would have in the wild. And I know this is the case even for my rescue animals. I have rabbits, and my rabbits have significantly less space than what they would have if they were wild animals. Obviously, these animals can't be released into the wild because they would be picked off straight away. But I'm very conscious of the fact that if they were wild animals, they would have, you know, a marked difference in space size. And then many obsessive behaviours are observed as well, you know, caused by frustration, boredom, lack of control of their lives, and no freedom. They've got no freedom of choice. They can't go beyond these walls. If you look at birds in zoos, have you ever wondered why they just don't fly away? You know, why they just don't fly away to freedom? Because a lot of them are in open air cages, and essentially they could do that, but it's because they can't. At a few days old, the majority of them will have the end of the wing severed, so which makes them lopsided. If you ever get the chance to see a bird close up in a zoo, when a bird spreads its wings out, spreads the wings out, you'll see that one of the wings has been severed at the end, so they can't fly. And this is something which is fundamental to a bird being taken away from them. You know, it's kind of like, you know, us as humans expecting to be able to walk and somebody breaking one of our legs so we can't walk properly. A bird is a fundamental right to fly, and the flying aspect is taken away from the lives. That is just so we can observe birds who don't really want to be observed close up. Now, this awful practice is called pinioning. So I'm going to move over now to watery prisons, aquariums. The majority of animals you've seen in aquaria will have been taken from the wild. They're packed and they're shipped thousands of miles away to the new home or the new prison. It's a watery prison in an aquarium. It may be fascinating to walk through these glass tunnels, you know, and be so close to the animals over your head as you're walking through. But is it right? Would you ever see all of these animals together in the same environment? You wouldn't. No matter how large a space they have in an aquarium, it's never any match for the space that they would have in the wild. A British zoo was found to be given antidepressants to penguins due to the environment in which they were being kept and due to the low moods these penguins were displaying. And again, why are we giving penguins medication to alter their mood because they can't cope with their environment that we have given them? There's a really good film, which I think is still available on Netflix, called Blackfish. It's around an orca, also known as a killer whale, but it's orca, is called Tilikum. Tilikum spent 33 years in captivity and was used to breed other orcas to be trained as well. Tilikum killed 3 trainers and was a very disturbed orca, and had lots of behavioural issues due to the fact that they shouldn't be kept in the environment they were kept in. Jeffrey Vander worked there for 7 years, and he left because he became so disturbed at how they were training these absolutely magnificent animals, and was integral in bringing Blackfish to our screens. So if you get an opportunity to watch it, it's a very sad film. But it really brings home. It's not graphic, but it really brings home very easily how awful you know, places like SeaWorld, Sealife, you know, aquariums really are, and you know, and why we shouldn't be doing these awful things to animals, and training them and to do tricks for human entertainment. Mobile zoos are those ones which travel around the country. They are moving around in, you know, they'll come backwards and forwards into schools. They'll do lots of different things. So sorry about that pause there. So mobile zoos, there's over 190 mobile zoos in the country, and the industry is virtually unregulated. So these are the ones which go backwards and forwards to different events, birthday parties, schools, and they do lots of travelling around the country. Licensing requirements vary around councils, and animals can spend lots of time travelling to venues like the schools or birthday parties, and animals which should not be handled actually are in these events. In one recent undercover investigation our group did, we found that animals were being brought to this event. It was a birthday party, stacked up in see-through plastic boxes. Then they unpacked for display, and then they're getting passed to children to handle. The other animals remained in plastic boxes until it was their turn to be handled. An African white hedgehog was filmed being placed on a wooden parquet floor with a circle of children sitting around cross-legged, and the hedgehog was running around with no place for him to hide. How does any of this teach respect for animals to children? And how can this be educational at all? It's just a money-making activity dressed up as education and dressed up as entertainment. It's not none of those for the animals. There's a reason why we don't come across African white hedgehogs and snakes and other animals which are used, tarantulas, in these kind of activities, because they don't belong in captivity in the UK, and they don't belong in captivity. So schools, please don't dress this up as education. It isn't education. You're teaching children that it's okay to exploit animals. You have so much technology available to you now, so please teach them about animals in their natural environments. Watch a David Attenborough program. There's absolutely loads of information on those, and somebody's actually taken the time and effort to go and watch them in their natural environments. Now I'm going to cover a little bit about the wild, about circuses and the Wild Animals and Circuses Act a few years ago, which came into being. Unfortunately, because it's called Wild Animals and Circuses, it left behind domestic animals. So circuses are still using loopholes where they can exploit animals like horses, dogs, and goats. They're constantly being transported around the country, kept in trucks and kept in captivity, and they have no real chance of a natural life. Can you imagine the amount of training which goes into teaching a horse how to walk on two legs? And for what? It's not educational value. It's actually quite sickening and disturbing, really, that somebody would say that as entertainment. The horses don't enjoy it. They really, really would not choose to do it. And again, it's teaching children that animal exploitation is okay. Now I'm going to move on to tethered birds of prey. Again, another type of animal which is regularly exploited. We have falconry centres, we have bird of prey centres, we have private and public events where wild birds of prey are kept captive. Ask yourself what a bird would do if they weren't tethered. Would they try to escape or would they remain? The withholding of food is common practice to training birds to return to someone to make sure they come backwards and forwards, okay? The majority of owls we see in centres are nocturnal. There are a couple of species who are active during the day and a couple who are active at dawn and dusk, but the majority of them are nocturnal. But none of them are going to be active during the day while they're tethered to a post. So even if somebody's using an argument that these owls or these birds are active during the day, that's, they can't be active when they're tethered to a post or expected to be attached to a person. And this is a sad situation that we have in a local market over in Tynemouth, where we have a number of tethered owls being used for photo opportunities for money. We've been working with Freedom for Animals to raise awareness about these birds who are also used in schools. Again, schools using these for education, all you're doing is showing children the wrong way to treat animals. And the argument that these birds may have been bred in captivity is wrong on so many levels. Firstly, they shouldn't have been bred. Why are we breeding wild animals? Secondly, they are in captivity. Captivity means against their will. Finally, they're being exploited because money is being made out of them. And they're tethered in a local market. And the fact that they're tethered speaks volumes as well, because again, it means that the animals, if they could choose to, they would fly away. So what can you do as an individual? There's an awful lots of things you can do. First of all, never visit a zoo, never visit an aquarium, home or abroad. When you're on holiday and you're getting leaflets from your tour operator saying you can organise trips to SeaWorld or Sealife or an aquarium or something like that, tell them that you disagree with them and you disapprove and you will not attend those events, and tell them that they need to take them off the tour offer because it is immoral. There's a lot of work being done about elephant rides. A lot of people know now that elephant rides are abhorrent, and people, they realise the amount of work which goes into the cruelty which goes into training elephants. But these other events are just as cruel as well. So don't go to, like SeaWorld and Sealife where they have dolphins and orcas performing for exploit, for entertainment. Don't attend falconry or bird of prey centres. If you see any tethered animals being used anywhere, any events, contact us or contact Freedom for Animals. They are all over social media. They also have their own website as well, with as much information as possible, whether it's photos, videos, locations, and what the activity is. Tell the organiser of this event politely that you don't agree with animals being exploited in this way. Contact Tynemouth Market and ask them to stop owls being exploited. I will put in the link from Freedom for Animals campaign. We know that Tynemouth Market have had well over 800 emails now, so we need to keep the pressure on because we need this activity to stop. Ask your MP to support a ban on pinioning. Okay, so obviously this is just to remind you the activity where they cut the bird's wings so they can't fly. Ask your MP to extend the Circus Act to include all animals, not just wild animals. Choose all human circuses. If you're going to go to a circus, check that they don't have any animals in, whether it's wild or domestic animals. And if they are human ones, support those ones and spend your money at those events. If your child talks about trips and being planned to the zoo or to a circus or a mobile zoo visiting the school, raise your objection. Speak to the head, speak to the person organising the trip and say that you do not want your child to be included in this, and ask for an alternative activity, and tell them that you disapprove because it is exploitation and it's not educational. Also, look at the work that Freedom for Animals do. Share their posts, help with their campaigns, I did mention that a lot of the facts I'm talking about have come from the campaign leaflets. They're doing an awful lot of good work, undercover work, and also lots on social media. So please help them. There are lots of ways in which we can observe animals without having to hurt them, train them, or capture or exploit them. So please make sure that when you're looking at animals, that you're looking at them in a way which does not exploit them. So thank you very much for listening. I hope that was useful to you. If you enjoy our work and you want to support us, please follow us on social media, on Facebook, on TikTok, on YouTube, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel, on Twitter and on Instagram. We're always happy to have more followers, and we really appreciate every one of you. But the more followers we have, the more we can get our word out. So this is Anna Amelia signing off now, saying thank you very much for listening, and goodbye for now.